Hey everyone, welcome back for another deep dive. Today we're looking into something you guys requested a lot, the Mongol Khwarazm War.
Oh yeah, that's a big one.
It is, yeah. We're in the 13th century here, folks, a real clash of empires. Some folks sent in some excerpts from a 2022 master's thesis all about the Khwarazmian state. Eric Davis, University of Calgary. It's really fascinating.
It is, yeah. I think one of the things that always kind of draws people to it is there's this idea that the Khwarazmians just lost because of their own arrogance. But it's more complicated than that, right?
Oh, yeah, for sure. That's what we're going to try and get to the bottom of today. I mean, why did the Khwarazmians, with their huge empire, all these resources, why did they fall to Genghis Khan? Was it really just overconfidence? Like, what was going on there?
Yeah, I think it's important to kind of set the stage first, right? So we've got the Mongols, led by Genghis Khan, obviously. And we've got the Khwarazmian Empire under Shah Muhammad, who controls a lot of territory, from like modern-day Iran to Afghanistan.
Wow, so a huge chunk of land. Huge, yeah. On paper, it seems like a total mismatch.
Like David and Goliath.
Exactly. You've got these nomadic Mongols against this established empire.
Right.
But we know that history doesn't always work out the way you think it will.
And I think this is a perfect example of that.
Absolutely.
So the excerpts you sent, they mention the siege of Otrar as like the real beginning of this conflict.
Yeah.
Can you kind of break that down for us? Like what happened there?
Yeah, so it all starts with a Mongol merchant caravan arriving at the city of Otrar, right? Which was a major trading hub on the Silk Road.
Oh, wow. Yeah, right in the thick of things.
Right. And these aren't just any merchants. These guys are also envoys representing Genghis Khan.
So a little more than just a trade deal.
Exactly. There's a diplomatic element to it.
Yeah. I can already see where this is going. Trade deals don't always end peacefully.
That's right. Not in this case. So the governor of Otrar, Inalchuk, he accuses these envoys of being spies. Now, whether he really believed that or whether he just wanted their stuff, that's up for debate.
Convenient excuse to just take their goods.
Could be. And the source mentions that this Inalchuk, he was a close ally of Turkin Khatun, the queen regent of the empire.
Oh, so there's some palace intrigue going on already.
Right.
Was this just him acting alone, or was this like part of some bigger power play?
It's hard to say for sure, but the sources definitely hint that Turkin Khatun's influence was there.
Wow.
And regardless, the outcome was not good. Inalchuk orders the execution of the envoys.
Ooh, bad move.
Yeah, you don't do that to Genghis Khan's people. And that's really what kicks off the whole war.
So what's Genghis Khan's response? I can't imagine he was happy about this.
He wasn't. I mean, he demands justice, right? Sends a message to Shah Muhammad asking to hand Inalchuk over for punishment, which, seems reasonable.
Yeah, a chance to de-escalate things.
Exactly. But here's the thing, Shah Muhammad refuses.
Well, why? This governor basically started a war and he's protecting him.
It's a great question. Some historians think Shah Muhammad underestimated the Mongols. Just saw them as like nomadic raiders, not a serious threat.
Okay, so maybe a little bit of arrogance there.
Maybe. But others think that Turkin Khatun had a hand in it, that she saw the Mongols as a threat to her own power.
Interesting. So maybe she pushed Shah Muhammad to refuse?
Could be. Whatever the reason, his refusal sealed the fate of his empire.
Wow, talk about a turning point.
It really was.
So Genghis Khan, feeling disrespected, decides to unleash his fury. And the Khwarazmians, caught up in their own internal politics, are about to face a storm they're totally unprepared for. Where did the Mongols strike first?
Well, Genghis Khan decided to make a statement. You can see he added insult to injury. Their first target was Otrar, the city where it all began.
Oh, wow, really?
Yeah. And keep in mind, Otrar wasn't some small town. This was a major fortified city right on the Silk Road. Eric Davis's thesis actually describes its defenses in detail. He says, the citadel, the outworks, and the town well strengthened, and a great quantity of instruments of war collected together.
Wow, they sound pretty confident.
They did. They thought they were untouchable.
But they didn't know the Mongols.
No, they didn't. And the Mongols had a different way of waging war.
All right, so it wasn't just about brute force.
No, they were strategic about it.
But how could they possibly take a city like Otrar with those walls, all those weapons?
That's a good question. You're probably imagining them charging in like wild men.
Right.
Yeah, kind of. They were fierce, sure. But their real strength was their discipline, their centralized command under Genghis Khan, and their mastery of siege warfare.
Okay, so they were more than just barbarians.
Much more.
They had a plan.
They always did.
What was their approach then?
Well, they weren't just about brute strength. They used these clever tactics.
Yes.
Psychological warfare. and a surrender or die policy.
Surrender or die. That sounds intense.
It was, but it was also very effective.
Okay, so break that down for me.
They knew that sieges took time and resources, so they offered cities a choice. Open your gates, submit to Mongol rule, and live. Or resist and face the consequences.
And those consequences, I'm guessing, weren't pretty.
No, not at all.
So, was it even really a choice?
Not really. I mean, knowing the Mongols' reputation.
Yeah, I bet that demoralized a lot of people.
It did. Fear was a weapon for them.
Okay, so fear and clever tactics.
Right. And they were incredibly resourceful, too. They would often use captured soldiers and even resources from their enemies.
Wow, so turning the enemy's strength against them.
Exactly. Very efficient.
Okay, that all makes sense. But I still keep thinking about Shah Muhammad's decision to protect Inalchuk even after he started the war.
Yeah.
It seems like internal politics played a big role in all of this.
They absolutely did. I mean, you've got the Mongols united under Genghis Khan, and then you've got the Khwarazmian Empire with all these internal tension, ethnic divisions, power struggles among the nobles, and then you've got Turk and Khatun pulling strings from the palace.
Wow, so a lot of chaos.
Yeah, a lot of moving parts.
And those divisions, I guess, they're going to become even more important as the war goes on.
They will. They're going to be exploited by the Mongols.
Okay, so even before the first battle, the Khwarazmians are already fighting a losing battle from within.
Yeah, you could say that.
This is getting interesting. So, what happens next? The Mongols are on the move. Where do they go?
Well, we'll have to dive into that in our next episode.
Oh, come on. Don't leave us hanging.
You'll have to wait and see.
All right. Well, folks, make sure to come back for the next deep dive to hear what happens next in this clash of empires. It's going to be a wild ride.
It will.
Welcome back, everyone, for part 2 of our deep dive. Last time, we left off with the Mongols on the move. They had just captured Otrar, and they were making their way across the Khwarazmian Empire, offering that surrender or die choice.
Right, that was their signature move.
It was, but did it work on everyone? Did every city just give in?
Well, that's where the psychological warfare comes in.
Yeah.
They were really good at spreading their reputation, tales of their victories, and their ruthlessness.
So it was a mix of reputation and real consequences.
Exactly, a very effective combination.
But I'm sure some cities resisted.
Oh, absolutely.
What happened then?
Well, the Mongols made sure those cities served as an example to deter others from resisting.
A brutal example, I'm guessing.
Yes, very much so.
Do you have any specific examples of that?
Sure. Take the city of Sukhwak. They resisted, and they faced the full force of the Mongol wrath.
Chilling.
Yeah, it was a deliberate strategy.
To make sure everyone knew what they were up against.
Exactly. A very effective way to spread fear.
Wow, so they were playing the long game here.
They were always thinking ahead.
So while this is going on, what about the Khwarazmian Empire? What are they doing to counter this?
Well, that's where those internal divisions come back into play.
Ah, right. The chaos we talked about.
Exactly. Shah Muhammad, the emperor, he couldn't get his act together. His empire was divided, different ethnic groups, nobles fighting each other for power.
So he's trying to fight a war with a completely fractured army.
Basically, yeah. Not a recipe for success.
No, not at all. It's like he's trying to conduct an orchestra, but every musician is playing a different tune.
A very chaotic orchestra.
Yeah. And while all this is happening, the Mongols are moving in with their unified, disciplined army.
Right, a very different picture.
This is starting to feel like a Greek tragedy almost.
It does, doesn't it?
They have the resources, the manpower, but they're defeated by their own inability to work together.
It's a common theme throughout history, unfortunately.
So the source you sent focuses a lot on the fall of Bukhara. Why was this city so important?
Well, Bukhara was a real jewel of the empire, a center of Islamic learning, culture.
Beautiful mosques, vibrant intellectual life.
Exactly. And it was also strategically important, right on the Silk Road.
Ah, so it controlled a lot of the trade going through the region.
Right, losing Bukhara was a big blow.
Both symbolically and practically.
Yeah, a major setback.
So what happened? How did it fall?
Well, the Mongols arrived at the gates, offered them the usual choice, surrender or die.
Right, their standard operating procedure.
But the city leaders decided to fight back.
Why? Didn't they learn from what happened at Otrar?
It's a good question. Maybe they thought their defenses were strong enough.
Hubris.
Perhaps. Or maybe they were influenced by Turk and Khatun, who, as you'll recall, had her own agenda.
Right, she was always playing the angles.
She was.
So a mix of pride, political maneuvering, And maybe a little bit of wishful thinking.
A dangerous combination.
It sounds like it.
And the Mongols, being masters of siege warfare, they quickly surrounded the city, cut off all supplies.
I can't imagine what it must have been like to be trapped inside.
It must have been terrifying. The Mongols had these battering rams, catapults, even tunnels.
Wow, they really brought out all the toys.
They did, and it was very effective.
How long did the siege last?
About 12 days.
12 days.
They put up a valiant fight, but it was hopeless.
So what happened when the city finally fell?
Well, the Mongols were not known for their mercy.
Yeah.
Especially when they faced resistance.
Right, we talked about that.
They unleashed a wave of violence.
No.
Those who fought back were killed. The city's elite were executed or humiliated, and many civilians were enslaved or conscripted into the Mongol army.
Brutal.
It was a very dark chapter.
So, Bukhara falls. What happens next?
The Mongols, emboldened by their victory, set their sights on an even bigger prize.
Which was?
Samarkand, the capital of the Khwarazmian Empire.
Oh, wow. The heart of the empire.
Exactly.
This is getting serious.
It is.
Samarkand, that was a magnificent city, wasn't it?
It was, famous for its architecture, its bazaars, and its strategic location on the Silk Road.
So losing Samarkand would be a huge blow to the Khwarazmians.
A devastating blow, both symbolically and strategically.
Okay, so the stakes are even higher now.
Much higher.
And I'm guessing Samarkand had a much larger garrison.
Oh, absolutely. It was heavily defended.
Did they put up a stronger fight?
Well, that's where things get interesting.
Yeah.
The siege of Samarkand actually challenges the idea that the Khwarazmians were just totally incompetent.
Oh. Tell me more.
So, unlike in Bukhara, where they just holed up inside the city, the Khwarazmians at Samarkand actually decided to fight in the open.
Really?
Yeah, and they fought pretty well, too.
They did. That's not the story you usually hear.
I know, right? It's a fascinating detail. They actually inflicted heavy losses on the Mongols during the initial engagements.
Wow, so they were holding their own.
They were, for a while at least.
But there's a but coming, isn't there?
There is. It wouldn't be the Khwarazmian Empire without a but.
Art, lay it on me.
Internal betrayal.
Ugh, not again.
Yep, a group of Turkic soldiers, possibly influenced by Turkin Khatun.
Of course, she's always lurking in the background.
She is. Anyway, these soldiers switched sides in the middle of the battle.
Wow, talk about a backstab.
Yeah, it was a devastating blow.
So what happened? Did the city fall immediately?
Pretty much. With the gates open from within, the Mongols just stormed in.
Another major defeat.
It was.
So what happens to Shah Muhammad at this point?
He flees.
He runs away.
He does. He realizes all is lost.
And the Mongols?
They're in hot pursuit.
Wow, this is intense.
It is.
So the empire is crumbling.
It is.
Is there anyone who can stop the Mongols?
Well, there is one more figure who emerges, someone who tries to rally the remaining forces. Jalal ad-Din, the Shah's son.
Okay, so a new hope.
We'll get to see about that.
Well, folks, make sure to join us for the final part of our deep dive to see what happens to Jalal ad-Din and the fate of the Khwarazmian Empire.
All right. Welcome back, everyone, for the final part of our deep dive into the Mongol-Khwarazm War. We left off with the Khwarazmian Empire in shambles, Shah Muhammad on the run, and his son, Jalal ad-Din, stepping up to try and rally the remaining forces. So tell me about this Jalal ad-Din. What kind of leader was he? Well, he's a bit of a tragic hero, really. He was known as a skilled warrior, a charismatic leader, but he inherited a bit of a mess, to put it mildly.
Yeah, an empire on the verge of collapse and facing the most powerful army the world had ever seen. So what was his strategy? Did he try to, rebuild the army, fortify cities?
He knew that the old ways wouldn't work against the Mongols. Sitting behind walls and waiting to be sieged, that was a losing strategy.
Yeah, the Mongols were masters of siege warfare.
Exactly, so Jalal ad-Din needed a new approach.
Something more proactive.
Right, something more dynamic.
So what did he do?
He decided to focus on mobility, building a fast-moving cavalry force.
Okay, so trying to match the Mongols' speed.
In a way, yes. But he also wanted to use their own tactics against them.
How so?
Remember how the Mongols used psychological warfare?
Oh, yeah, spreading fear and all that.
Exactly. Jalal ad-Din decided to turn that around.
How did he do that?
By attacking them, launching raids deep into Mongol territory.
Wow, so taking the fight to the enemy.
Yes, a very bold strategy.
Risky, but I guess it could pay off if it worked.
It did, to some extent. It certainly surprised the Mongols.
I bet it did. They weren't used to being attacked on their own turf.
No, they weren't. They were used to being the aggressors, the ones dictating the terms.
So this is interesting. We're starting to see a Khwarazmian leader actually pushing back against the Mongols?
Yes, and there's one battle in particular that demonstrates this. the Battle of Parwan.
Oh, right. I remember that from the source. Didn't the Khwarazmians actually win that one?
They did. It was a remarkable victory.
Tell me everything.
All right, so the Mongols were marching towards the city of Herat. In modern-day Afghanistan,
Okay.
Jalal ad-Din knew he couldn't defend the city directly, so he decided to set a trap.
Ooh, I like where this is going.
He led his forces to a narrow valley near the town of Parwan, a place where the Mongol cavalry wouldn't have much room to maneuver.
Smart. Using the terrain to his advantage.
Exactly. The Mongols, confident in their numbers, marched right into the valley.
Big mistake.
It was. They even tried to use their old trick of setting up dummy soldiers.
Really? Trying to inflate their numbers.
Yep, hoping to scare Jalal ad-Din's forces.
But he wasn't fooled, was he?
No, he wasn't. He had scouts, and he knew exactly what they were up to.
Okay, so the trap is set.
The Mongols are marching in, completely unaware of what's about to hit them.
What happens next?
The Khwarazmians attack. Archers raining arrows down on the Mongols, cavalry charging in from the flanks.
Wow, a classic ambush.
It was a complete rout.
So the Mongols are defeated, they retreat. Jalal ad-Din is the hero of the hour.
He was, at least for a moment.
Oh, come on, there's another but, isn't there?
There is,
What
unfortunately.
is it this time?
Internal conflict?
Ugh, not again.
I'm afraid so.
Ah,
A dispute erupts between two of Jalal ad-Din's key allies.
over what?
A captured horse.
Seriously, a horse.
Yep, seems ridiculous, doesn't it?
It does, kinda.
But it shows you how deep these divisions ran.
Personal ambition, even in the face of total annihilation. So what happens? Does this dispute escalate?
It does. One of the allies, feeling slighted, abandons Jalal ad-Din. Takes a big chunk of the army with him.
So, just like that, the victory is squandered.
Pretty much.
It's like watching a house of cards collapse.
And of course, the Mongols were quick to capitalize on this.
They always were, weren't they?
They were masters of exploiting any weakness.
So, what happens next? The Mongols are regrouping, they're angry, and Jalal ad-Din's forces are weakened.
Genghis Khan himself takes charge.
Oh boy, this isn't good.
He's determined to crush Jalal ad-Din once and for all.
So it's a chase now.
It is.
Where does it end?
At the Indus River, modern-day Pakistan,
Okay.
Jalal ad-Din, with a much smaller force, is trapped between the Mongols and the river.
A desperate situation.
It was.
What does he do?
He fights, of course. He and his loyal followers put up a brave resistance.
But it's hopeless, right?
It was a lost cause from the start.
So what happens?
Jalal ad-Din is defeated. His army is scattered. His treasures are plundered.
And him? What happens to him?
Well, he does something pretty dramatic.
What's that?
He rides his horse to the edge of a cliff, overlooking the river.
Jumps off.
He jumps into the river.
He does.
Wow, talk about a dramatic exit.
He managed to swim across, escape the Mongols.
He survived.
He did. Even Genghis Khan was impressed by his courage.
Wow, that's saying something.
It is.
But even though he escaped, it's still the end of the Khwarazmian Empire, right?
It is, essentially.
Jalal ad-Din becomes a king without a kingdom.
Wandering from court to court, trying to rebuild his power.
A tragic end to a once mighty empire. So we've seen the rise and fall of the Khwarazmians, their clash with the Mongols, their internal struggles, the Mongol war machine, their tactics, their ruthlessness, and ultimately the collapse of an empire. It's a fascinating story, but also a cautionary tale.
I agree.
A reminder that strength comes not just from military power, but also from unity, from shared purpose.
And from the ability to overcome internal divisions? Absolutely. But there's one more thing I wanted to touch on. The source you sent mentioned Mongol spies operating within the Khwarazmian Empire. How much did that contribute to the Mongol victory?
That's a great question. It's clear that the Mongols had a very effective intelligence network. Their merchants acted as spies, gathering information.
Troop movements, defenses, even political gossip.
Exactly.
So they were playing a much more sophisticated game than we might think.
They were. They understood the value of information.
It makes you wonder, if the Khwarazmians had been more aware of this, if they had had their own spies, could the outcome have been different?
It's hard to say for sure, but it certainly highlights the importance of intelligence in warfare.
Yeah. Sometimes the real battles are fought in the shadows.
Indeed.
Well, that's a fascinating thought to end on. Thanks for joining us for this deep dive. It's been a wild ride through history.
My pleasure. It's always a privilege to explore these stories with you.
All right, folks, that's it for today. Make sure to check back soon for another deep dive into the past. We've got plenty more stories to tell.